Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Anointed Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Terry Linscott. Again, so grateful that you're joining me today. Today, we're going to jump into some content. It's part 3 of what I'm calling Killers of Success, or you could title it Killers of Growth. We've talked about insanity, about the fact that you're not willing to change, doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. And we've talked about communication. It's a killer of success or growth. Today, I want to dive into a killer of success that I believe is probably one at the very top, and it's the lack of training, or just training, not training at all. And we're going to deal with training today. How do we train teams? How do we train people? Why do we train? What does training look like? I want to dive into this because I believe when we have great training and we have constant and consistent training with upgraded and updated training abilities, we find greater success with great longevity. Hey, again, I'm grateful that you're joining me. Before we jump into it, a couple of things. Number one, if you've never subscribed to the channel, please do so by just hitting the subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. We drop one every other week on a Thursday, and all of these are on our platforms, whether on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, or on all the podcasts where you can download a podcast. And I would be grateful for that. Second thing is, if this content's helping you, reach out to me on my website, terrylinscott.com. And on that website, you can connect with me. You can shoot me an email. You can ask me a question. We can talk about how I can help your teams. And there are multiple people that are actually shooting me emails. And I really appreciate that this content is adding value. Also on my website, there you can find what is one of my newest ventures is you'll see a tab. It's called MIT, or Ministers in Training. It is an actual training course, 25 weeks that I've written, and I've taught every class myself on what it means to be a minister of the gospel, and it's a training. How do we do it? What do we focus on? What does it look like? And so you can click there. It's free to anybody that would like to be a part of that 25 weeks online class. And on top of that, I've just come out with my very first book. I've now become an author. I'm excited about that. But it is, Am I Called Into Ministry? How to Determine What Comes Next. And you can find this book on Amazon. You can find it at Barnes & Nobles. And you can also find it on digital. So Kindle, iBooks, and such like that. So again, it's Am I Called Into Ministry? How to Determine What Comes Next. And it's my very first book. A link will be up on my website. You can purchase it there and be a part of that. Again, I'm so grateful for the ability to do that. And lastly, just share this. If this content is adding value, share this with your friends, your family, coworkers, supervisors, your boss, your teams. And I promise you, this will be a blessing to them just as much as it is to you. Hey, let's jump into it today. As I've always said, this is the Anointed Leadership Podcast, where we're asking God's anointing to get on us to be great leaders. And so to do that, I just want to take a Bible verse. Today, we're talking about a killer of success, and I'm calling it the lack of training. It's a killer of success. You've got to be developed and invested in training. Matthew chapter 28, verse 19 and 20. It's one of, Jesus, in my opinion, greatest leader of all times. Over 2,000 years ago, he walked the face of the earth, took 12 men, and still is changing the globe today under his leadership in 3.5 years. The very last thing, I think there's some important things to see in people that say things. One is, what is the first thing they said? And what is the last thing that they said? And one of the last things that Jesus told his disciples was in Matthew chapter 28. And he says this, "Go therefore and make disciples of all nations." That means you have no favorites. You don't have no, ups and downs, racial issues. It's all people. But he says this in verse 20, "Teaching them to observe all things that I have commanded you, and lo, I am with you always, even to the end of the age." Amen. What we find here is that your ability to develop people or train people is to teach what you've been commanded, what you've got in your life. What Jesus was telling his disciples was, don't just expect them to do what you tell them, but go and teach. Teaching is a line upon line, precept upon precept, a line upon online. It's reiterating it. It's constantly saying the same thing over and over and over and over. It's called teaching. How do you teach your kids to clean up their room? How do you teach them to drive? You spend time with them. There's all of these things. It's a teaching, which is also equivalent to training. I want you to understand something this. If you and I don't have a training ability or something we do to train or something to train off of, we will never find the real growth that we want to have in our business, our ministries, our entities. We'll never see the success. Training develops longevity, not just success. And I want to leave the legacy. I believe this, when you start training, and if you miss it, you'll never see the growth that you want. But the more training you do, the more things you train people to do things the way you want them done, the way they need to be done as the leader, right? You have to train people. You can't just tell them, you have to train them. What happens is growth begins to become evident. We see growth. I said this in one of my episodes, that growth creates complexity and complexity kills growth. So if you don't train, the growth that you do experience, you're going to destroy it because you don't have the right elements in place. You might have the resources, but you don't have the right elements of people doing what they should be doing. Bible says this in Proverbs chapter 29, verse 18. It says, people without vision cast off restraint. So training isn't just about the task. You got to get to the point of why we do it. Vision is my why. Vision isn't, my mission is my what, my vision is my why. We must train vision. I hear it said so many times, and I say it this way, is a vision must be caught, not taught. When a vision is caught, when a plan is caught, it's ownership. You invested into it. You believe it belongs to you. You eat, sleep, breathe, wake up, dream about it. It's being caught. You want people under you, whether they're employees, they're in the ministry, you want them to catch the vision. I see it in a company like Chick-fil-A, in my opinion. People there have caught the vision. The training is, watch, my pleasure, not you're welcome, my pleasure. That is a training. Everybody says it, and they do it with a smile. Whether they mean it or not, you don't know that because they have been trained to smile and say it. It is training. You must, and the vision is to be a place that's welcoming, encouraging. We want to serve you. That's their vision. That's Chick-fil-A. And my pleasure has been trained. It has been brainwashed. That you must look at it that way at times. That training equals brainwashing the person to be able to do what you want them to do, right? Now, I'm not into brainwashing. I'm not into all of this hypno, all that kind of garbage. In my opinion, I'm going to brainwash you in simple this term. Train you how to do it, what I need done. I want the outcome. Now, you may do it a little different, but I want this outcome right here. And so that's what it looks like. So here's the key. Here's what I want to start off with. Training is the key to successful productivity. It's the key to successful productivity, but it's also the key to longevity. It is the legacy starter. It's the foundation of our legacy. We are never meant to retire. We're meant to pass this on. The Bible says that from your generation to generation, your kids' kids shall be blessed. It's a generational situation. The goal isn't just to be done. The goal is to pass it on and have a legacy about it. Well, you'll never have it without training. Without proper training of those around us, watch this, we will never be able to continue in our main focus. If we're not training, I'm the leader, if I'm not training, I find myself even today in our ministry, and I'm actually beginning to do even more training, more conversations, more talks. This is what I like. This is what I don't like. This is all part of training. What happens is if I don't train the people around me, and then we have training protocols in place, I will quit focusing on what my main function should be and begin to focus on everybody else's function. If I would spend the effort to train properly, listen, then I will be able to spend more time on what I should be focusing on, which is on the vision rather than in the vision. The reason why you have employees, the reason why you have people that work for you, the reason why people are underneath you is so that they can work in it but your job is to work on it. Vision is always evolving. It always is. But you have to balance and take the time to actually put in the training. I think this, and I hear this from a lot of leaders. A lot of leaders want to blame the people under them or those that follow them or those that are in second tier leadership, why things are failing, why things are not working, why the performance isn't there. I have actually stepped back and I've thought about this in my own life, in my own ministry, in the operations of Abundant Life Church and the many arms that we're in. What I've realized is I can't blame the employee if myself or the second tier people aren't doing their job properly. The employees are only doing what they've been taught or what they've been given permission to do in their own training and development. So we got to stop pointing the blame on the people working with us or for us and start recognizing where I may have lacked in my own training, right? Why we do that is we're very prideful individuals. I believe pride kills. Pride destroys. It's the thing that separates. And what happens in leadership, pride hinders us from seeing our own faults, and we're always pointing out the faults of those under us. And so as leaders, if we're going to be good trainers, that means we have to recognize our weaknesses, our faults. I may not be the guy doing all the training, but what I may have to do is establish what are my training points? What is my end goal? What is it the thing I'm looking for? What is that objective that I may have? And if I can point the objective and how do we get there, there could be somebody else that does a better job training than me. That's okay. But we can't blame everybody else without first taking an inward look at and a hard look at our own leadership, right? And what I want you to look at here, this thought here, is I'm not talking about training isn't developing. Developing people and training people are just two different functions, and they are two different results. Development is to pull out of the person what's in them so they can be all that they're meant to be and do what everything their DNA is made up. Training is to put into somebody, is put in them the how-to, the wherewithal of doing a job. Develop is the pull out. Training is the put in. And I'm talking about putting in. I'm not talking about developing. I get developing, and I want to develop people, but you can't always focus on development without training first. Paul and Timothy, when you study out the Bible, Timothy was trained by Paul through circumcision and then developed to become a pastor. There is a process here, and you and I have to be willing, right, to walk through the training process before there's a development process. Because how do you develop if you haven't proven them faithful in and through the training, right? So I want to just point that out. I'm going to point out a couple of things, some myths, and one other thought, that there are avenues of training. But let's talk about the myths of training. This is good. In my own ministry, my own church, we're into this process of SOPs, standard operating procedures, the way we do things. We used to be a really small church with 5 people on staff, and everything was intertwined. Now we're a staff of about 11 people. We have interns. We have volunteer staff that come in. It's a lot of moving parts. We're doing more today than we've ever done. And so without SOPs, the standard operating procedures is our standard, right? That is the one thing that keeps us in the middle of the road. We're creating that right now. We've been doing it now for a few months because things have gotten so big and so fast that if we didn't have them, so we didn't know what that standard was. What was the plumb line of Abundant Life Church and everything we're doing, where we're doing, Abundant Life Church is doing a lot. We have missionaries on the mission field. We have a traveling crusade ministry that we started. We've planted churches. We've taken over churches. We're starting a Bible college. We do local outreaches. We've got so many arms. We have internship program. We've got a lot going on. And with that, we had to create these SOPs because there's various hands on them. So here's what a myth is, that an SOP is actually a training manual. Woo! It is a great manual, but it is not training. You can't hand somebody a book and say, I've trained them. That is a myth. Another myth is this: I told them what to do. That's a myth. That is not training. I told them what to do. Why aren't they doing it? I told them to do it. The third myth I wrote down is, I showed them what to do. I showed them that one time. I walked over there with them. I did it with them. That's a myth. That is not training. Another one is I've reminded them what to do. That's not training. There is so much more to this than having an SOP that they read. I told them, I showed them, I reminded them. Here's another myth of training. Well, they said they got it. That is a myth. You did not train them. They're not trained. They're not effective. You're not going to find great success there. And I could make the list go on, but I want to say this last one. They did it right the last time. That's not training. Woo, I'm having a good time on this one because I see these myths every day in my own ministry. I hear this from people. I hear this from department heads to staff members. I hear it. I hear it from even out of my own mouth at times. It's like, I don't understand. It reminds me of Jesus. How long must I be with you? It's almost like you want to be Jesus. I'm out of here. I don't care what you say. I'm done. Figure it out. That's not training. Understand that. So let's look at those are the myths. How do we train people? I wrote down some avenues, different ways that you could train. One is online. You could create an online platform. They have training manuals online. They have training videos online. There's all of those types of things. You have on OJT. I came from the OJT, that hard knocks of on-the-job training. To me, working with somebody on the job is much more educational to Terry than the books, right? Which is the next one, instructor-led. You could teach it. You could show me how to do it. I'm instructing you how to do it. That is a form of training. Coaching. Constantly back and forth, having that oversight, watching me, pointing out my problem. So training. How about job shadowing? This is an avenue to train. Having somebody work with you and shadow them. Peer learning. You're learning from different peers, and you're sitting with different people doing the job and learning different ways to do it. The goal is get to the end. There's many avenues, so you can find them. But understand this: telling somebody one time is not training. Showing them one time is not training them. Giving them a book is not training them. Training is work. That's actually what Jesus was telling his disciples: is go make a disciple, a follower of you, a disciplined one that does what you do. That's what he said. Teach them what I commanded you. So do it my way. Do it the way Christ did it, the way he taught me. And that's what it is. So here's what we want to look at. Effective training leads to success and longevity. Our goal should be to have a legacy, not a one-time event, right? We don't want to be one and dones. We want these things to go on forever and do that. So here's what I want you to do. Before I jump into these 5 different thoughts that I have today, there's the basics of training. What I look at is this right here, but I want you to understand this one thing. Each person or each entity or each ministry or organization will require a different technique for training. Not everybody's the same, and thank God that we're not all the same. But you must find what works for them, not for you as the trainer. Most of the time, we just want people to fit the mold. But if we let them become who they are created to be, we will define and understand who they are and give them the resources to flourish in the training while there is development going on. So understand that. You can't focus. It's not a cookie cutter. Training is not cookie cutter. Everybody. I mean, listen, I have 4 kids. I trained all 4 of them differently. How to do things, pick up things, do things. Same goal. But they all learn differently. So you have to find the learning of it. And when you do, you attack that with them and you'll find great success through them. So here's what I call basics of training today. How do we beat the killer of success? We put an emphasis on training. One is you must be very clear on the objective and the goal. What is the end and what are the checkpoints? That objective, what are we going after? And what are the goals? What are our checkpoints to determine whether we've got there? You've got to be clear, not on what I need you to do, but why I need you to do it. Why are we doing this? This is the objective. Why are we, for example, in my ministry, we do LOL, Love Out Loud block parties. And the last couple of years, we've done 1 a month in 1 location from a church. Well, now we're doing 2 a month, and we're going to do, instead of 4 this year, we're doing 8 this year on the same day, same time. And so many people keep asking me, why are we doing it? Why don't we just do them every other month or every other week? Why do we have to do them at the same time? There's a why in that question. And the response is why? Is because my job is to mobilize as many people as possible to go out and preach the gospel and win the lost and win as many people as possible. So here's the goal. This is my objective, is to mobilize, not reach people. It's to mobilize. The objective is not to go and feed food and preach the message. It's to mobilize as many. It doesn't matter if they're handing water to somebody, cooking a hot dog, if they're playing music or they're playing games. It's all mobilization. That's my why. And that's the objective. So in that, though it may put a little demand upon the staff, it's still our why. It's what we are called to do. Be clear, not on the what, but the why first. Be consistent on communicating that message. Everything we're doing is mobilization. We are a mobilization headquarters. We're mobilizing people to do what God's called them to do. We got to set clear, you got to set attainable goals for them. What are their goals? Don't expect them to be a person that's been with you for 15 years. Expect them to only been here for 6 months, right? Expect them to have only been here for 3 years. Not everybody catches everything right away, right? Inside of that. So be very clear on the objective. This is how we train. What is the why first, then the what? If we always want to put out the what, the task, drill in them the why first. Get them to catch that. When they get it, oh, I get why we're doing it. Now I understand the what. I'll be able to grab that much easier. 1, be clear on the objective and goals. 2, remember these are the basics of training. 1, be clear on the objective and goals. 2, be elementary in your explanation. Very elementary. Explain it to the way that a 5-year-old would be able to pick up and do that. Why would you do that? That's more effort on the trainer than the trainee. The trainer has to figure out to make it so simple, not overcomplicated. Let me give you an example. There's somebody that's been a leader in my life, and the way they explain things is they're walking away from me talking. That is not elementary. And just talking. I was in a phone call the other day, and my father-in-law called me, and we were talking about one thing at our new building, and then he starts talking about another thing, and I was confused. I was like, what are you talking about? He says, the slab out back. I said, well, I thought we were talking about the ramp. No, I'm talking about, and the elementary recognizes that I have to take the process of thinking about what I'm saying to make sure they understand it. You can't just talk from your knowledge. You don't know what you don't know, so make it to the point where you think they know nothing and make it so elementary. Here's what I'm saying. Don't insult their intelligence. That's not our goal. Our goal is to make it so simple that even a toddler could do it, right? Make it for a child and do it step by step. Step by step. Don't leave much room for interpretation. Leave some. Don't leave a bunch, because if you can get it to the point of the way you do it, then they have room for their own interpretation where they'll put their DNA, their spin on it, and it'll become theirs. But if you just make it broad and general, you've given them permission to do whatever they want to do, and now you can't be upset when they do it their way. Step by step, right? And when we were doing ours, Chris Hamburger, who handles our stuff here, it was so simple. He was asking every little detailed question. Well, why did you put that there? Where did that come? How did you find that? What drawer was that in? What side of the drawer was that in? That's step by step now. Understand the reason why you're doing it is that a child could do that, right? Take nothing for granted. Don't think because they have a degree. Don't think because they have a bachelor's, an associate, a master's, a doctorate. Don't think because they have anything that they've done their homework that they actually are going to get it. It's elementary and it's step by step. 1, be clear on the objective and on the goals. This is how we kill the killer of success of not training. We make it very clear. We are very elementary in it. Number 3, show and tell, not tell. Show and tell, not tell. Show and tell. It means you got to get your hands dirty, or somebody has to get their hand dirty to show them what to do. Show them where the copier is. Show them where the paper is. Show them where you refill the paper. Show them what button to push to copy, what button to push to scan, what button to push to email. Go through every little, I'm just talking about a copying machine, right? Printer, copier. It's step by step. And you got to show them, not tell them, oh, it's in there, go figure it out. No, when you give them time to figure it out, you give much room for great error. You must Understand it's your job to train. Telling someone one time and expect them to get it never works. Never works, right? Think about your GPS in your car, on your phone. When you're driving, hey, in 10 miles, you're going to be exiting. In 2 miles, you're exiting. 1 mile, you're exiting. In half a mile, you're exiting. In 1,000 feet, you're exiting. Exit now. Notice that. They're smart enough to know that we don't get it the first time. We would have been distracted. We'd have forgot. We'd have got in conversation, singing a song, had a phone call, and it was constant. You must do it over and over and over and over. This is how you kill the killer. You train properly. You be clear. You be elementary. You show and tell. In other words, you got to establish time inside your schedule to train. You have to be intentional. You can have a great strategy, but without intentionality, you're never going to do it. Make the time to show and tell and watch over and over and over. How do we kill the killer of success and lack of training? Is we are very clear on the objective and the goals. We are elementary in our explanation. We are show and tell. We have to put emphasis on training. I would challenge you right now, those of you that are listening and you have that leadership, I would challenge you. Go look at your training. I've looked at mine, and we're getting ready to amp up our levels of training in various things. Why? Because just because we've done it, because we talked about it, because we established a system to do it, doesn't mean it's going to work. We have to constantly do this. 1, be clear on your objective and goals. 2, be elementary in your explanation. 3, show and tell. 4, allow for feedback and questions. This is the key. Most of us don't want a question. We don't want feedback. We don't even want them talking. Just do what I tell you, right? So here's what happens is we make them understand there is never a stupid question. Even if they asked you a question that you've already went over. If they're asking you means they didn't catch it. Their questions will determine their level of receptiveness. You have to see that. Give them permission to feedback and ask the question, right? Here's what you got to do. For you to do this, I know it. You must keep your emotions under control because you'll get irritated. You'll get frustrated. You'll be like, I've already told you that. Oh, I've already said that. I've showed you that 10 times, right? This is what we will do. You got to be under control and in self-control, right? And here's the thing. They don't know what they don't know. And neither do you unless they ask the question. So even if you went over it, make sure you give permission and you explain it. And you may have to explain it in various ways, different avenues to get there. But make sure you allow for feedback and emotion. This is how we do training. We number one, we are very clear on our why, on our objectives and goals. We are very elementary in our explanation, step by step. We leave nothing undone. We are a show and tell individual. We don't just tell them to go do it and figure it out. We show them. We take them by the hand. We allow for feedback and questions. And the last one is this: become more engaged in the person than you are the task. This is the thing. We're mission-minded people, but be engaged in the person. If you're only engaged in the task, you'll miss what they're explaining to you, why they're not getting it. You'll miss their weaknesses and you'll miss their strengths. You'll find that you're more interested in the mission means you're overlooking the person. And when you overlook the person, they're only going to give you enough time to make a paycheck. But if you get involved in the person and you are engaged in the person and you see their strengths, you see their weaknesses, now what they're going to do is give you their life. You're going to find they're going to be more willing to go all in and learn and figure out, ask questions and do everything they can to make you happy and please you because you have engaged them, not just the task, right? Training is relational. People shouldn't feel like you're higher than them or better than them. People should feel like they matter. And when they matter, man, that's what happens when you come with a connection, and they'll be easier to, they'll catch it faster because of the relationship that is meant to be. You were never designed to do this on your own. You were designed to do it in relationships. If you'll be relational, be more engaged, it'll make training easier, funner, and you'll find quicker success because they will catch it because you believe in them. Hey, this is how we beat it. 1, much clearer in our objectives and goals. 2, elementary in our explanation. 3, we're show and tell. 4, we allow for questions and feedback. 5, be relational in your training. Find out a little bit about them. Understand their background. Understand their strengths. Understand their weaknesses. Capitalize on their strengths. Find ways to undergird and support their weaknesses and develop them. Hey, till next time, I call you blessed and remind you of a couple things. Share this, my book, Am I Called Into Ministry? If you feel called, go get that off of my website, terrylinscott.com, Amazon, Kindle, iPad, iBooks, whatever it is. Hey, till next time, I call you blessed, and may the anointing of God get all over you and on you to do everything God's called you to do in Jesus' name.